A lot has changed with macOS in the last few years, and if you're new to Mac, or even an experienced user for that matter, there are a ton of settings and features in here that can both make or break your experience. It's something that I try and keep up on to maximize how efficiently I use macOS and to make sure that my Mac is set up to work for me as best as possible. That means minimizing distractions, utilizing features that matter, and disabling ones that don't, but it's not something that is super obvious until you actually dig into them. Some things may initially look like great features but end up becoming disruptive or counterproductive. And for myself, it's been a journey to find something that actually works to my benefit. So today, I just wanted to share what that looks like in hopes of helping out other folks as well. I'm going to start off right from the first time you start up a Mac and go through the setup and how everything works in macOS. Then dive into all the important details and changes, along with some general tips that have helped me stay organized and focused. Alright, we're going to start off with a fresh install of macOS. The first thing I'll do is go through the setup wizard by selecting a language and region, and then I have an option to transfer data to this Mac. I use this all the time when I buy a new Mac because I can basically do a one-to-one copy of my old Mac to the new one, so it really minimizes setup time, or if you have a backup, you can restore that here, but since we're starting from scratch, I'm going to hit setup as new and hit continue. Next is an accessibility screen where if you have certain vision, motor, or hearing needs, you can turn on specific features, and there's also a cognitive option where if you click that, you can select if you prefer light or dark mode, which you can do a bit later in the setup, but just for the sake of going through here, I'll select dark mode and I won't worry about anything else here. Then I'll select my Wi-Fi network from this list and go through and create my Mac account. And the only thing you want to make sure here is allow computer account password to be reset with your Apple account is checked. This just allows you to reset your password from your Apple ID in the event that you ever forget it. Otherwise, you'll be out of luck and you won't be able to get in here. From there, you'll sign into your Apple account, or if you don't already have one, you'll want to create one. And once you've done that, Apple is going to ask you which privacy settings you want to enable. Now, if you already have an Apple device like an iPad, it'll suggest what you have enabled on that machine where you can click next, but I want to set up mine a little bit differently, so I'll click Customize Settings. I'm going to turn on location because there are some apps that I use that use location services. Anytime a web browser asks for your location, it's going to need this enabled, say if you're on Google Maps or you're shopping and using a store locator. But after that, App Analytics I'll share with Apple, Screen Time I'll hit Continue on, and I'll skip Apple Intelligence and deselect Siri here. This is of course totally up to you and what you're comfortable with, like anything that I talk about today for that matter, but I just find that I never really use Siri or Apple Intelligence on my Macs, so those stay off. Then we can set up Touch ID. I'll skip Apple Pay as it's not something that I'm going to use here, and as you can see, you can select an appearance right here as well. Just a note here, auto means that the appearance will switch from light to dark automatically depending on what time of day it is, so if you prefer light in the day and dark at night, that may be a good option, but I'm going to leave that on dark mode. From there, we'll get this little note about automatic updates, we'll hit continue, and the initial setup is done. Now that we're in macOS, let's just go over some of the basics in terms of what we're looking at, starting with the dock. By default, this is going to run along the bottom of the screen and show a bunch of apps. Apple pins a bunch here by default, and these are essentially used for quick access to things that we're going to use the most. So the first thing that I'm going to do is remove everything here I'm not going to use by clicking with two fingers on the trackpad on each icon, go to Options, and selecting Remove from Dock. Clicking with two fingers on a trackpad is essentially the same as right-clicking on a PC, or you can hold Control while you click to do the same thing, but with our dock cleared out, we can now add the things that we want to go in here. I obviously don't have anything on this machine yet, so I'm going to start off by downloading all the apps I prefer to use on this Mac. I will touch on some of the key ones a bit later, and I will leave a more complete list in the description, but once that's finished, I'm going to start adding my most used apps to the dock. To do that, I'm just gonna hit this apps icon in the dock, which brings up all of our apps, and then I'm gonna drag the ones I want to the dock. You can also do this with any open apps that aren't pinned by right-clicking or clicking with 2 fingers on it, going to options, and going to keep in dock. I usually like to organize these in terms of most used or by type, just by dragging them to where I want them, and there's a couple of more things that I need to adjust here. The first being the size of the dock itself. I can do that by simply mousing over this vertical rule until the cursor changes and dragging it up and down, and making it smaller gives me a bit more screen real estate. You can also show and hide the dock as well by right-clicking on that vertical rule and hitting Turn on Hiding, where it'll only show when you mouse over the bottom of the screen, but I'm just gonna leave that static with smaller icons. Now there are a couple more things I want to do here. I'm gonna right-click on that same area and I'm gonna go into Dock Settings, and then I'm gonna toggle off Show Suggested and Recent Apps in Dock. That just removes any unwanted clutter on the right side of the dock, but if you ever want to add things like files or folders here, you can simply drag them on to the right side of the dock as well for quick access to their contents. You can also drag files right from the Finder to specific apps to open them, and in regards to the Finder, this is basically how you're going to manage all your files and folders on your Mac, similar to Windows Explorer if you're coming from that world. And there's a lot that I like to set up and change in here. You can see we've got 4 different views: an icon view, list view, column view, and gallery. By default, Finder will use the icon view, but I like to switch that to the list view with a few more tweaks to make this a little more manageable. So to start off, while we're in a list view, we're gonna head to View in the menu bar and go to Show View Options. And here, make sure that Always Open in List View is checked and hit Set as default. Then I can keep my list view active all the time, and I like this because I can see more information for each file or folder and sort it as needed, but unlike the column view where we can see parent folders as we click through things, there's nothing like that at all on here. So what I like to do is go to View and click Show Path Bar. That gives us a nice little breadcrumb at the bottom of the window, and the great thing about this is, not only does it provide you with a nice navigation indicator, but I can also right-click it and go to Open in Terminal, which is super handy if you ever want to run scripts or apps from command line tools. Another thing I like to do from the View menu is go to Show Status Bar, which just gives you an indicator telling you how many files are in a folder and how much storage is on the drive you're looking at. And then to keep everything organized, I like to go to Finder, Settings, and on the Advanced tab, make sure that Keep Folders on Top when sorting by name is checked so that all my folders are always at the top of the list view. Next, I'm going to set up a folder structure that works best for me, which is going to look different for everyone. For me personally, outside of video projects, everything generally lives within my Documents folder, so I'm gonna go there and just start creating folders for different types of works or files that I'm gonna have, either by going through the ellipsis menu at the top or by hitting Command-Shift-N. There's also one thing that we can do in here that I absolutely love in macOS 26, where we can actually change our folder colors and add icons to them. Changing color is as simple as right-clicking and then just selecting a color, which I find is easier to scan visually, and if you want to add an icon, you can just right-click the folder and go to Customize Folder, and you can choose whatever you'd like. You can see it's not super visible in a list view, but we can adjust the list view size by hitting Command plus or minus, or more permanently back in our view options where we can set the icon size. But with that done, there are just a few other things left to do. If you look at the sidebar, yours is probably still the default layout, so we're gonna go to Finder, Settings, and under the Sidebar tab, we can customize what we want to see by checking or unchecking items. I generally uncheck the Media folder, the tags at the bottom, and Recents because I don't find much use for them, and I can also drag folders here I use frequently as I see fit. Speaking of recent files, you'll notice that each time we open a new Finder window, it will default to recent files, and to change that, I can go back to my Finder settings under the General tab and just pick a new default location to open up to. That's really all I'm gonna do as far as Finder setup goes, but some quick shortcuts that can be of help here are Command N to open up a new Finder window, Command C will copy stuff, Command V will paste it, and if you want to move a file instead of just copying it, you'll just hit Command Option V. You can also find most of these commands within the menu bar, which is the next thing that we're going to talk about. As you probably have gathered, this is where we can access app-specific menus, where the only thing that doesn't change here is the little Apple menu in the left corner. The contents within the menu bar will also change when you hold down the Option key, where the Apple menu specifically will give you access to system information, which can be really useful. Say if you bought or are selling a used Mac, or you just want to see detailed hardware info, we can go into system information, and under power in the sidebar, you can see battery health and cycle count info for the Mac. That Option key also allows you to force close apps from the dock if they lock up, along with other menu items depending on the app, but the real thing that I want to look at with the menu bar is along the right side where all these little icons are. Clicking the date and time in the right corner brings up the notification center along with any widgets you might have here. You can add those by hitting the Edit Widgets button and selecting whatever you find useful. I always put a couple of things in here like battery levels for my devices, reminders, and weather, but it's not something that I pay much attention to. The button beside it, however, I use all the time, and that brings up Control Center, where I can control brightness levels, wireless connectivity, volume, and so on, and this is fully customizable as well. Hitting Edit Controls brings up dozens of different options from screen capture to automation and focus modes. For myself, I've just added a shortcut to control my studio lights, but you can tailor this to however you like, move things around, and you'll notice that when you go to add something, you can either add it to the control center or right to the menu bar. You can also right-click Control Center items to add them to the menu bar if you prefer, although this can fill up quite quickly when you combine it with the app-specific items in here, especially on a smaller screen like this, but there are a couple of things that we can do to fix that. If I go to Settings and go to Menu Bar, you'll see that I can select or deselect anything that I want to show up in there, but I can also adjust the clock options where if I remove the date, it opens up a little space there. I also removed the spotlight and Wi-Fi options. Wi-Fi I never really touch, and it's already in the control center anyway, and Spotlight I prefer to bring up by hitting the Command Space keyboard shortcut, and this might be the most powerful tool within macOS 26. With Spotlight Search, I can basically type in anything here from apps, files, or actions, and macOS will show me anything that it finds that might be relevant. I often use this for launching apps that I don't have in my dock, but I also use it for quick calculations, unit conversions, and I will occasionally adjust settings right within here. Also, let's say that you're in an app and you're not exactly sure where something is in the menu bar. Spotlight Search is context-aware, so it'll actually bring up the functionality that is nested away within the focused application. Another thing that not a ton of people know about is you can also type something in that you want to search on the web and then hit Command B, which will open up a browser window with that search. But one of my favorite things is something brand new in macOS 26, and that is clipboard history. If I hit the clipboard icon at the end of Spotlight, this allows me to enable clipboard history, where I can look through all the previous things that I've copied, be it text, images, or whatever else, which can be quite useful. That should give us a pretty good grasp on how to get things done on a Mac, but one fundamental thing that we haven't really touched on is how to navigate around and manage our viewport in macOS. Up in the left corner, we've got these traffic controls where red closes a window, yellow will minimize it, and green will full screen it. Just a note here that when you close a window, it normally just closes the window itself, but the app will stay open until you close it from the menu bar or from the dock, or by hitting Command Q. If you prefer to use keyboard shortcuts for the other controls, Control Command F will full screen most apps, Command M will minimize them, Command W will close the window, and one of the more confusing things here, Command H will hide an app, which is similar to minimizing with a slight difference. Minimizing something is essentially going to put that specific window down in the dock and keep it there, so you'll see if I minimize one app window, others can remain, where if I hide an app, it basically just makes the entire app invisible. Both are still going to be running in the background and keep your app state, but hiding an app can be beneficial at times if you want to completely remove visibility of something. Say, if you're in a meeting or something like that, or you don't want any distractions. You may also notice that when we hover over the green traffic controls, we get some window snapping options where we can snap windows to specific parts of the screen for multitasking. And we can also do this by grabbing the window and pushing it to the edge of the viewport until we get this outline. Or better yet, if you hold Option down, you can just move the window to the desired snapping area. That covers moving app windows around, but let's say that I want to quickly switch between apps. To do that, I can just hit Command Tab to toggle between all my active apps, and if I just want to switch between two active windows within the same app, I can hit Command and the backtick key. I can also bring up all my active apps or windows by hitting the F3 key, swiping up with 3 fingers, or hitting Control and the up arrow, all of which bring up Mission Control. You can see you get this bird's eye view of everything open, and the important thing to note here is along the top, where you can break all of these off into different desktops. That can be really useful if we want to organize desktops into specific workflows and just to reduce clutter, and similar to how we open Mission Control, I can switch between desktops by swiping with 3 fingers left or right, holding Control and hitting the left and right arrows, or by doing it within Mission Control itself. Now we should have a pretty good understanding of how to move around in here, but I really don't like the default look of everything in macOS, so let's change that a little. Instead of the stock Tahoe wallpaper, I want to use one of my own, so I'm going to go into Settings under Wallpaper. I'm going to click Add Photo, select Choose File, and select my wallpaper to change it. And then to match up all my icons, I'll go to the Appearance tab, and select the dark icon style because I do prefer the look over the default ones. You can also choose clear or tinted icons, but I find them not as readable, and you can change the default theme color here as well if you'd like. If you do change it, it changes all of your UI highlights and your folder colors, but just like we changed our individual folder colors earlier, we can change the default folder color here without disturbing those ones that we touched before. That makes things look a lot nicer, but there's still some things that I don't really like on the home screen. I generally don't like having widgets, and I also don't like that anytime I mount a drive, an icon shows up in here, or when I take a screenshot, and I want a clean blank slate. To fix this, I'm going to go into Settings under Desktop and Dock. I'll uncheck Show Items on Desktop, which hides those away, and a bit further down, I'll uncheck Show Widgets on Desktop as well, and everything should be gone. If you do ever want to see that again, all you need to do is click on your desktop and it's all there, but I also don't want all my screenshots collecting here, so let's talk about that for a second. You can take a screenshot in macOS in a few different ways. To take a full screen capture, you can hit Command-Shift-3. To take a snippet of your screen, you can hit Command-Shift-4. And if you are creating a snippet, you can hold down Control while you're doing it, and it'll copy to the clipboard instead of saving the image. You'll notice the images that do save by default save to the desktop, which to me really isn't ideal, but if I hit Command-Shift-5, it brings up the capture menu, and within here you can do all sorts of things from image capture to recording your screen or a specific window, but you'll notice I do have the option to define a location to save the screenshot to, and once this is set, even when I use those other commands, my screenshots will always go there, and it just makes things a little more organized with less random clutter. Speaking of clutter, one thing that you'll probably notice as you install apps is when you restart your Mac, you're likely going to have a whole bunch of stuff that pops up by default. This is not ideal, but it's a super easy fix as well. We'll just head into Settings under General, and go to login items, and right at the top, we can remove any apps that we don't want to start at login. With all of that done, the last thing that I want to get into before we talk about apps and system maintenance is hot corners. These are something that I generally avoid, but I know a lot of people like them. By default, if you hover over the bottom corner of your screen, you'll see a little note pop up where you can make a quick note, but if we head into settings under desktop and dock, all the way down at the bottom there's a hot corners button where we've got a few different things that we can do for each corner. These options are not super useful to me, so I just leave them all blank, but if you do want to use them, a little trick with these that isn't super obvious is if you hold down a key while you're assigning something, you will have to hold down that key while going into the corner, which prevents them from popping up over your UI when you don't want them to. Alright, now I want to talk about apps a bit. By now you probably noticed that all your apps live within an applications directory that we can either access through the apps icon from the dock or through the Finder, and I'll just briefly touch on some things that I find useful. Dropover is one of my favorite apps where I can select files within a folder and shake them, and drop them into this little bin, and then I can go into other folders and do the same thing, and then I can drop all those files into a single directory, so I don't have to go back and forth moving files around. I also like using Clean My Mac. I know a lot of folks don't, but especially if you're new to Mac, it does provide a nice little hub for managing files, seeing system info at a glance, and keeping your Mac tidy. Affinity is a fantastic design tool that is free and that I do a lot of my thumbnail work on. Blip is a great app if you've got an Android device and you want to simulate AirDrop functionality with a Mac, which, by the way, I do have another video going over the Apple ecosystem covering AirDrop and other Apple devices that work with macOS that I will link below, along with a more comprehensive list of apps I use, but there's only a few other things that I want to briefly mention. The first is something that you should keep an eye on, which are OS updates. We did enable automatic updates during setup, but it's always a good idea to pop in and double check that we're up to date by going to Settings, General, and Software Update. Another thing that we should double check that's turned on is Filevault. This used to show up in the setup, but I didn't see it when we went through, so just to make sure that that's enabled, I'm going to go into Settings, and under Privacy and Security, go to Filevault and make sure that that's on. This is just going to encrypt your Mac drive, so if anything ever happens where it gets lost or stolen, anyone who comes across your Mac won't have access to anything without a password. Speaking of your drive, it's probably good to back up your system every once in a while, especially if you're storing important documents on your Mac, and to do that, I'll just need an external SSD like the one that I've got here. I'll plug that in and hit OK on the accessory connection, go into General Settings and Time Machine, hit Add Backup Disk, select my drive, and add a password and hit Done. And that should generate a backup that you can restore within macOS if you ever have to, or at that setup screen when first setting up a Mac. With all of those things, I think it should give you a pretty good head start on how to set up a Mac. There are definitely things that I did not get to, and I could probably go on for hours with this stuff, so if there's anything that you would like to add that I did not mention, please leave a comment down below, but that's all I've got for you today. If you want to see more content like this, or help me make a macOS app that plays rock anthems on startup, feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next upload.